Hello everybody and welcome back to the Overlap Breakdown channel. Now today we are here to cover Carlos Baleba finally to Manchester United after what appears to be 2 years of chasing the Cameroonian midfielder. It looks like Manchester United might have actually finally gone and secured or potentially securing a deal for Carlos Baleba. So if you do enjoy the pieces, as always, thanks for all your support over the summer. Really do appreciate it. Please don't forget to like, comment and subscribe to the channel. And today, if you're a United fan, I am absolutely buzzing this morning in the studio. If you've been watching the Overlap Breakdown for a few months, maybe a few years, this is a midfielder I have been desperate for United to sign. I'll just say that right off the top. I don't usually go really big on signings, especially to my club, because I scrutinise absolutely everything. This is, for me, the perfect third midfielder for Manchester United. And when we were doing who should United sign for midfielder before Tielemans and Santos coming, it was Baleba. Who was it last season? It was Baleba. Even with Tielemans and Santos, who balances it out? Baleba. And it's got to this point now where I am actually buzzing. I lost my head last night. I was literally sat in bed last night and I tweeted something on the lines of, I can't believe we're going into another season where we've got Champions League and they've just not backed the manager enough. And I think a lot of Manchester United fans were getting really, impatient with everything. And don't get me wrong, Carlos Baleba has got an injury that will keep him out for, I think, the first 2 weeks of the start of the season. But for the fee that's being rumoured, which is £60 million plus £5 million in add-ons, for a player of Baleba's quality, and also the other market references were going off across the Premier League, Tonali, Bruno Guimaraes, great deal, obviously, Elliot Anderson, Mateus Fernandes, Buade. This, for me, is just such a good deal, and I can't stress this enough. And I hope, for all the people who were against this signing, today I am here to try and prove why I want this player so much. So, I'm going to talk about Manchester United initially. We did a piece covering all of Carrick's pre-season tactics, what we've learned, and my main standout in that was the balance in midfield and in the back line has to be right for the next phase of Michael Carrick. And that is because when Manchester United want to build a little bit deeper, and the two players are in here, I think we've got quite a lot of variety in here now. I think we've got Santos and Tielemans, who are both very punchy passers, ones who can take the ball here, play against deep blocks, fire it through opposition lines. And I think in this area, I think we've got so many solutions under high pressure. The point I kept making under Michael Carrick in pre-season and even in last season is when that ball comes the other way, so if I just take it into what Man United were looking like out of possession, which is a little bit more like this, but obviously higher up, when the ball is coming this other way, the amount of space around this midfield too, in these defensive transitions, was too big for me, for the midfielders in the structure to cover. The reason why I'm so big on Baleba is I think he is one of the best, if not the best player in the Premier League, beside maybe like Declan Rice. I think he's got that level of athleticism off the ball to cover these wide areas. Behind the wingers, in front of the fullbacks, say everyone pushes on like this into maybe more of an attacking shape. We often spoke about how, in that pre-season video, we often spoke about how Manchester United are actually pushing both fullbacks on. And when the ball comes the other way, what if you get transition down the side like this and someone's maybe in behind both your fullback and your winger who's pushed on like that? For me, this from Carlos Baleba is his selling point. And I can't, honestly, I'm absolutely buzzing with this because I absolutely love Tielemans, Santos, Kobbie Mainoo as an on-ball dynamic. And I'm not saying that Carlos Baleba is perfect on the ball. I'll go on to speak about why there are, concerns there. A lot of people are obviously talking about what do you make of his season last season? What are we going to expect from Baleba to change at Manchester United? Straight away, in that Manchester United midfielders video where I did say I wanted Carlos Baleba to be Manchester United's midfield signing, what I was often talking about was, at Brighton, Carlos Baleba's being asked to pick up the ball in these positions. At Manchester United, that role is going to completely change because what we have now is Youri Tielemans, Kobbie Mainoo, Andrey Santos, who all play in front of the defence. Carlos Baleba, in my mind, has never, ever been a number 6, has never been that. And the reason I say that is because if I throw up a progressive carries map from the season before last, so this is the 24-25 season, when Manchester United were looking at Carlos Baleba, for under 23 midfielders across Europe, he made 200 progressive carries behind only Zaire Emery and Andy Diouf. That player was playing number 6, so you don't really get to see much of that ball carrying work. What does he look like when he gets the ball into stride? I've got the graphic from Opta on your screen right now to show you the amount of these lines where he's carrying right through the centre of opposition pressure. If I think about Manchester United and I think about maybe the mobility of that three in there, Kobbie Mainoo, Tielemans, and Andrey Santos. Andrey Santos, a little bit more of a ball carrier. Kobbie Mainoo, that type of ball carrier, but not someone who's going to, stride with long legs through meters and meters of space. A little bit more of a small space. I'll take one on, get it through to the midfield, lay it off. I think the type of midfielder Manchester United will get in Carlos Baleba is one who does incredible stuff ahead of the build-up phase, which is ahead of these two. So if one drops in like this and they're taking the ball, let's say it's Tielemans, Mainoo, Santos, all of them work so well with a player who's just going to play a little bit in front here and be someone who can connect the top line to the defensive line and do everything in between. Not just on the ball, but off the ball. And I'm going to show you what this looks like on the screen right now. So in an example I've got on your screen, this was against Liverpool, and this was, I think, the season before last. We can see that he's taking up that same position. He's being asked to take the ball here. Now, when Liverpool's press actually comes onto him, we can see how much momentum Carlos Baleba likes to build in his dribbles and his carrying. But you don't get to see this enough at Brighton because he's often tasked with being so deep. So we can see now he takes the ball, opens up his back foot, makes the pitch big. He's actually spun on the ball, so now he's facing towards the play. And he's got two lines of players against him for Liverpool. He takes on 4 different players in this example. He takes on 2 different lines of players, pushes Brighton all the way into the final third, and the final ball lets him down in this occasion. So when we're talking about the quality that you could open up, we're going to see that a little bit more. He's more of a rangy player in terms of the ball carrying. I think he's a defensive general, a defensive specialist, someone who does all the work off the ball, which I'll also go on to talk about. But then he's got that long-legged type of nature where he's not a build-up player. I think when people are watching him maybe struggle with the ball on the edge of the box, the type of midfielders Manchester United have signed automatically discard him from being in them positions because them three are all better at him than them three at doing that one thing. So straight away in my mind, I'm thinking, well, what's the other type of midfielder you need in there? You need someone who can do what them three can't, and that's what Carlos Baleba brings you. In the same game, this is talking about us pressing high. So again, as I was speaking about that 4-2-4, when we press high up like this and we're against opposition defence, Brighton also press in a very similar shape. I've got this example again in that same game for Liverpool. The build-up starts, centre-half's a split, centre-half gets it, Dominic Szoboszlai then rotates a little bit out of the forward line. If I just move up 2 midfielders like this. So we can imagine that this is the back line, don't worry about this. This is the back line building up. Dominic Szoboszlai comes and tries to receive the ball in behind this forward line. Carlos Baleba, when that ball comes over here, is like a heat-seeking missile just to go bang and run and pin him to that side of the pitch. He does that in this occasion, wins the ball high for Brighton, wins it, turns it over, gets a throw-in the final third. So if I'm talking about his ability off the ball, I'm talking about why I like him so much for United on the flip side of the ball, which is the defensive actions. If I show you his defensive actions map, and this is from the 25-26 season, the season that everyone is worried about, look at how many of them final third defensive actions are coming, and look at how many wide patches he's covering. Look at that cluster of defensive actions in the left back zone, the right back zone, the right wing zone, even the left wing zone. This is a player who's applying himself to his man often and winning the ball high consistently throughout games. If I take that AC Milan game we all saw in pre-season, the first line, when it's bypassed, there's just not enough mobility behind the ball. Carlos Baleba has got incredible mobility to do that. And he can sit in there with a Kobbie Mainoo, a Santos, a Tielemans, and give that balance to Manchester United. And I think, honestly, for the rumoured fee of 60 million plus £5 million in add-ons, it's such a good deal. This is a player who's injured at the moment, but has only had 1 career injury before this, and he missed 1 game only. And if I take you to the pressures map, so we're talking about Manchester United pressing against the ball, what do they look like? Again, I've got a graphic from the 25-26 season on your screen right now. Look at the amount of counter pressures, high intensity pressures that are on this map for Carlos Baleba. Look how many of them are in the final third for Brighton. This is a man who can do so much good for Manchester United on the other side of the ball. And I don't think he's useless in possession. He's not one of them players. I'm speaking about how his carrying can unlock a different element to Manchester United, which is having someone who can run with the ball from here and drive it up the pitch. But if you don't want to believe me when I say that, here are his 3 coaches and what they had to say about Carlos Baleba when they worked with him. Paulo Fonseca at Lille. You have some players like Lenny Yoro, Buade, Carlos Baleba. You see immediately the quality, the bravery, the courage, and the intelligence is so important. That's what he had to say after working with him. Fabian Hürzeler. We all know that Carlos has an impact on our game because of his physicality and his quality in possession, and he proved it in an impressive way today. Roberto De Zerbi said when he first got him, I believe in Carlos. He can become one of the best players in the Premier League for the future. That's for sure. So what I'm speaking about right here is a potential really, really good midfielder for Manchester United to work with. He's 22 years old. We've got Andrey, Santos, Kobbie Mainoo, Tielemans, a little bit older. And I think finally I can say that Manchester United have rebuilt the centre of their pitch with genuine care and actually nurture for what the problem is. The inability to control games. I think we've signed players who are more ball-playing midfielders, players who can take the ball, control the game deep in our own half, up against low blocks. They can all create chances. They can all break lines. How much have we spoke about that with Santos, Tielemans? But now we've got a different dynamic of player who does all the dirty work, but can carry the ball through the phases and be that little bit more of a general in midfield, a little bit more of a get his arms out, get through the pressure, carry the ball with his feet. And I just think props to Manchester United because I lost my head. I've been losing my head for weeks talking about, I think Tielemans' announcement was over a month ago and how slow the market has been. I do think there's been serious due diligence done for Manchester United for pound where to put the money. Carlos Baleba for 60 million in this market, in my opinion, once again, is incredible. I think it's incredible. I would have paid more for him, even with the injury. Like I genuinely would have paid more. And I'm trying my hardest not to get carried away because obviously we were speaking about the season being done and Man United not having enough bodies in the door. But it feels so refreshing that if this deal gets done, the midfield has finally not been overlooked in a transfer window. We've signed 3. And that's just really, really, really encouraging for me. But I'm going to go on now and speak about some more of Baleba's ball winning and why I think it's like a top 1% attribute of him and why I think in high pressure, in mid-block, he will be outstanding for Manchester United. So again, I've got this recovery tackle that was made in the middle of the pitches against Chelsea. We can see on this picture right here that Carlos Baleba is pressed right up onto Moises Caicedo. We can see that when the ball comes over the pressure and it's actually nodded down by a Chelsea player, Van Heck has gone all the way in. Now, Carlos Baleba's reaction to this is to detach off his marker in Moises Caicedo, run all the way back, get his legs out, scoop the ball away from the dribbler, keep the ball high, and it turns into a Brighton attack. This is what I'm talking about. This is what I need at Manchester United for it to look incredible. So, yeah, and then I've got another example of just his physical capacity out wide when the ball is transitioned. So this is a situation we saw a lot against AC Milan. This is against Everton at home. Jared Branthwaite's pushed all the way up from left back, won the ball back, and it's actually bounced into the channel for Barry. We can see that the 2 centre-halves have maintained their position for Brighton in the back line. They've not stepped out to jump onto the striker. Who's retreated? Who's covering the run of Barry? Who's covering the run of Barry, sorry? Carlos Baleba runs all the way back into that right back zone, wins the ball deep in his half, turns it into a Brighton possession. They regain possession. So, again, I just think this is such a good move for Manchester United, and I think this is one that I hope is just genuinely looked at as such great balance, such great market value, and such great profiling from Manchester United in that midfield area. And I, as you know on the channel, I'm a massive, I critique my club more than anyone because I just love them more than anything. So I micro-analyse every single detail, sometimes even too much. I didn't see a world where we were going to have maybe, 60 million, 50 million, 30 million, what is that? That's 140 million. 140 million on 3 midfielders, and to end up with that balance of them 3 in there for 140 million, I just think that's such great business. I honestly do, and I never saw this transfer coming. Looking back on it, I just never saw it coming. I wanted it, but I just never thought it was going to happen. And just one more example before we wrap up with my final thoughts. This is again talking about his carrying through pressure. I used this example in the Manchester United midfielders scouting piece. We can see the same thing what we were talking about for that carry through pressure, that ability on the ball. Not to so much play with the ball, pass it, keep it circulating, because we've got that. Let's not forget that. We've got that already, okay? So now we're talking about, can someone step out of midfield with the ball and actually start attacking with the ball? Again, carry through pressure. Brighton are in the build-up. Carlos Baleba, deepest midfielder for Brighton, takes the ball on the back foot, receives it, gets past Morgan Rogers, gives him the stiff arm, just gets him out of the way with his arm, breezes past. He's faced with 2 more midfielders. This is Amadou Onana in front of him, by the way, one of the best ball winners in Premier League at the moment. runs past him, runs past Boubacar Kamara, gets into the final third, gives it to the left winger. Brighton are get a chance from this. So, yeah, I hope I've done my best to convince you on Carlos Baleba, because for me, this is one that I've always wanted. And it's not often. I think I did this with Benjamin Sesko when he signed, when I was like, I genuinely believe in this player so much, a player I've watched for years, a player I've wanted for years. When he come to Brighton, everyone was going, where's the next Carlos Baleba? And I feel like £60 million is what the quoted fee is. I think you would have probably paid that for the next Carlos Baleba anyway, and we've got the actual one for the same amount of money. There are a couple murmurings. Obviously, Laurie Whitwell's been talking about, can United sign a central midfielder, left-back sort of dynamic, someone who can play both. I'm not going to say Carlos Baleba's going to play in midfield, at left-back, sorry. He might not. But I just think for the amount of times we've covered these shuttling moments, these amount of times he's putting pressure out wide, the amount of times he's winning the ball back out wide, I'm not going to completely discard that he could maybe play left back. Maybe if you've got Tielemans and Santos in there, or Kobbie Mainoo Santos, and you want a bit more mobility down this left-hand side, I'm not saying that I would put him there, and I don't think it's his initial, first team position. But I think there could be something interesting there, and I'm not going to say he's definitely going to play left back, but if we're talking about that modern day fullback, it doesn't look too bad if he comes and steps in midfield like this, and plays in that 3-man in there, whilst also having Bruno ahead of the play like this. Imagine having that in midfield, a tucked-in Carlos Baleba with one of Tielemans, Santos, Bruno. It's got mobility, it's got technical ability to control games, it can break down low blocks, it can break lines, it can attack, it can go transition both ways. So, yeah, I'm just really excited about this signing. Sorry if I've gone over the top, because I just couldn't believe it. I was driving into work. I literally couldn't believe it. My phone was blowing up. One of my good mates was like, are you ready for what's about to drop? And I was like, oh no, what's coming? And I thought the worst. But in my opinion, it's actually turned out to be the polar opposite of the worst, which is the best possible outcome, which is Carlos Baleba to suit Manchester United's midfield three. And honestly, lads, we finally rebuilt the midfield, and I hope I've convinced you that this is an unbelievably good signing for me. So, yeah, thank you so much for watching this episode of the Overlap Breakdown. If you do enjoy, please do not forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and let us know what you've made of Carlos Baleba to Manchester United. And we'll see you next week for more analysis. Thank you.
This has been a Global and the Overlap production.